how to control your anger using Seneca's timeless wisdom. Anger is one of the most seductive emotions. It rushes in with certainty, makes us feel powerful, justified, even righteous. But behind that sudden rush is something far more dangerous, something irrational, impulsive, and self-destructive. We've all felt it. The flash of heat in a conversation, the pounding heart after being insulted, the quiet seed that follows an injustice. And in those moments, it feels like we should be angry, like it's the only proper reaction. But what if it's not? What if anger, far from being strength, is actually one of the clearest signs that we've lost control of ourselves? That's the core insight of Lucius Annaeus Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher who wrote one of the most complete dissections of rage in all of philosophical history. In his work De Ira on anger, Seneca gives us something astonishing, not just advice, but an entire blueprint for how to master one of the most explosive parts of our human nature. Let's not be naive. Anger is ancient. It's built into us. It's a survival mechanism. You feel it when your boundaries are crossed, when your dignity is challenged, or when something sacred to you is threatened. But what Seneca noticed centuries before neuroscience could back him up is that while anger begins as a flash of instinct, what sustains it is thought. And not just any thought, but the wrong kind of thought. We tell ourselves stories, we replay the offense, we amplify it, we imagine revenge. And through all this mental repetition, we convince ourselves that our anger is not just justified, it's necessary. That it gives us strength, that it protects us, that it tells others they can't mess with us. But Seneca saw the truth with laser clarity. Anger feels like strength, but it is actually a form of madness. His words are unforgettable. Anger is a brief insanity, but not metaphorical insanity, actual insanity. Why? Because in anger we lose rational control. We lose proportion. We forget context. We act in haste and regret in hindsight. Seneca doesn't say, anger is bad, so stop being angry. He says, anger is a sickness of the mind. Learn to diagnose it. Learn to treat it, or it will destroy you. Now pause and ask yourself, how many decisions in your life were made from that sickened state? How many words spoken in anger later haunted you? How many bridges burned, only to realize the fire came from inside you?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This is where Seneca's wisdom hits with full force. Because he doesn't just explain why anger is dangerous, he tells us exactly how to control it. Not suppress it, not ignore it, but master it. And that starts with one essential philosophical idea. Anger isn't something that happens to us. It's something we agree to. It begins with an internal judgment. Something bad happens, and we interpret it in a way that fuels the fire. We say, they disrespected me, or this is unfair, or they always do this. But in every case, we are assigning meaning. We are layering interpretation on top of fact. And once you see that, you realize something radical. If your thoughts can trigger your anger, then your thoughts can also end it. That's the foundation of Stoic anger management, controlling the story, catching the narrative before it explodes. And patience. You don't wait until you're furious, you start much earlier. You watch your assumptions. You question your reactions. You ask, is this worth my peace? Is my perception accurate? Is my anger helping or just hurting? This is not weakness. This is the highest form of strength. because anyone can lash out, anyone can shout. But to pause, to reflect, to control yourself in the face of provocation that's rare. That's power. Seneca gives us strategies that are eerily practical, even today. Don't respond in the heat of the moment. Delay your reaction. Breathe. Step away. Let the wave pass. Why? Because anger is like a storm, it cannot last long. It needs your thoughts to keep feeding it. Cut off the fuel, and it dies. This is your first weapon, time. Time creates distance. Distance creates clarity. And clarity reveals that what felt like an attack might have been a misunderstanding. What felt like betrayal might have been ignorance. What felt personal was never about you at all. This is how you start gaining control, not by pretending you're a robot, but by realizing that emotions are not commands, they are signals. And you don't have to obey every signal, especially one as destructive as anger. Because when you give in, when you allow rage to steer your life, you become what Seneca feared most, a person ruled not by reason, but by reaction. Now let me ask you, how different would your life be if you responded to anger like a doctor treats illness instead of like a warrior going to battle? Training the inner gladiator, how to build unshakable emotional strength the Stoic way. Seneca didn't believe in avoiding difficulty. He believed in meeting it well. And to do that, you need training not just of the body, but of the mind. The Stoics didn't imagine emotional mastery as passive calm or Zen-like detachment, but they imagined it as warrior discipline. A mental toughness that comes not from numbing emotion, but from understanding its roots, questioning its motives, and deciding deliberately what to do with it. Anger, in particular, was seen as the ultimate test of your inner gladiator. Because it shows up fast, it demands action, and it feels right in the moment. But that's the trap. Anger dares you to act before you think. Seneca's response: train to pause. Training the inner gladiator means you prepare for anger before it arrives. You don't wait for the heat to rise. You anticipate it like a general who knows when the next ambush will come. That means studying your triggers. What kinds of comments cut the deepest? What situations spark your temper? What people tend to pull you into reaction? Most people float through life unaware of their emotional weak points. The Stoic doesn't. The Stoic prepares for the fight before the fight begins. You strengthen your awareness the way a gladiator strengthens his grip, through repetition, through reflection, through focused discipline. Seneca suggested visualizing worst-case scenarios as a form of mental training. He called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But not to be pessimistic, but to be ready. You ask yourself, what if this person insults me tomorrow? How will I respond? Or what if I get cut off in traffic? Will I lash out or let go? When you rehearse your responses with reason, you train your reflexes to follow thought, not impulse. You train your nervous system to slow down when it wants to explode. This is not denial. This is command, emotional command. And it's one of the rarest forms of power you can develop in a distracted, reactive world. Let's be real, this isn't easy. It's far easier to say, I was just angry. I couldn't help it. But that's a story, a soft excuse. And Seneca would call it out. He'd say, you can help it, but you haven't trained enough. Imagine how we treat physical strength. We know it takes time, effort, failure, repetition. Emotional strength is the same. You don't get it by reading about it. You get it by catching yourself in the fire, by holding your tongue when every cell in your body is screaming to speak, by walking away when your pride is howling to stay. That's the Stoic definition of courage, not just fighting your enemies, but fighting your ego. And here's the paradox. The more you resist the urge to express anger, the more your anger weakens. It's like a beast that loses power the less you feed it. You begin to see anger not as fire to use, but as fog to move through. It clouds your thinking. It distorts your view. Seneca said, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." You think you're defending yourself, but often you're doing more damage than anyone else ever could. So what does it look like to be a modern Stoic warrior? It means catching your breath before you speak. It means turning your focus inward instead of outward. It means trading short-term satisfaction for long-term strength. You walk through life with awareness of how fragile peace can be and how powerful restraint truly is. Seneca didn't ask us to be perfect. He asked us to be practicing. Every time you pause, every time you let an insult pass, every time you reframe a frustrating moment as training instead of torture, you build something unshakable inside you. You don't just become calm, you become clear. And clarity, in a world ruled by reaction, is a form of rebellion. So here's the question: if someone pushed your buttons today, what would rise first? Ego or discipline? Pride or preparation? Because the Stoics weren't interested in sounding wise. They wanted to be wise in the moment it mattered most. The fire inside, how to turn anger into purpose without burning everything down. Anger, at its core, is energy. Raw, explosive, fast-moving energy. It surges in your chest, tightens your jaw, races through your thoughts like a wildfire looking for dry grass. And most people, they either suppress it or unleash it. They either pretend it's not there, shoving it down until it leaks out later in twisted ways, or they let it explode, damaging relationships, reputations, and sometimes themselves. But what if there's another way? What if anger doesn't have to be your enemy or your master? What if, guided by wisdom, it could become fuel not for destruction, but for direction? That's the path Seneca walked, and it's the fire we're going to learn how to hold. One of the most misunderstood things about Stoic philosophy is the idea that it's about emotionless living. It's not. Stoicism isn't about becoming a stone. It's about becoming stable. It's about developing a relationship with your emotions that makes them servants of your purpose, not tyrants of your life. Seneca didn't tell us to kill our anger. He told us to transform it, to temper it like steel. Because underneath every burst of rage is a signal, a flash of insight, a message, something you care about, something violated, something worth protecting, but not by lashing out, by leaning in. By leaning in. So let's break this down. The Stoic response to anger is not suppression, it's translation. Anger is the first draft. It's the unedited reaction to perceived injustice or pain. It's your inner alarm going off. But what Seneca teaches us is that you don't act on that first draft. You revise. You sit with it. You ask, what is this really about? Not just, why am I mad? But what am I trying to defend? What do I feel I've lost? Is this anger about now, or is it echoing something much older? Because often, anger is grief wearing armor. It's disappointment dressed as rage. You're not just angry your coworker disrespected you in a meeting. You're angry because it mirrors 100 other moments where your voice wasn't heard. You're not just mad at your partner's words. You're reacting to a lifetime of being misunderstood. And the moment you recognize this, when you see the pattern behind the punch, you can begin to shift. You move from explosion to exploration. You take the fire, and instead of throwing it outward, you contain it. You warm yourself with it. You cook something with it. You create. That's what Seneca meant when he said, "No man is made angry by real misfortunes, but by their interpretation." It's not the event, it's the meaning you assign to it. So what if you could assign new meaning? What if your anger wasn't something to fear, but something to study? This is where the Stoic becomes an alchemist. You don't let your anger fester into bitterness. You use it as a compass. You say, if this situation is waking something up in me, then maybe I've been asleep to something important. You use that awareness to draw boundaries with clarity instead of cruelty. You speak not to hurt, but to heal. You act not to dominate, but to realign. Because once your anger points to purpose, it stops needing to scream. Here's the key difference. Reactive anger is about control. You want to change the other person. You want to win the moment. But purposeful anger is about commitment. You want to protect something sacred, your peace, your values, your vision. And that shift is everything. Because now you're not a victim of the fire. You're the one holding the torch. Think about the people in history who used anger wisely: Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. These were not men without anger. These were men who mastered their anger, who used it not as fuel for vengeance, but as fuel for justice. They didn't shout louder. They stood firmer. Their anger was quiet, deep, unwavering. It didn't destroy, it transformed. You can do the same in your life, but it takes training. It takes mindfulness. It takes stepping back from the flame long enough to realize what it's trying to light up. Is it pointing to something you need to say no to? Is it revealing where you've let your boundaries be trampled? Is it showing you that a part of yourself is tired of being ignored? These are not easy questions, but they are the doorway to self-mastery. And Seneca, in all his depth, leaves us with this truth: it is not the man who has little, but the man who wants more, that is poor. Translate that to anger. It is not the person who feels rage, but the one who is ruled by it, who is truly weak. So here's the challenge. Can you feel the fire, but not let it consume you? Can you use it, not to destroy, but to forge something better? That's the mark of strength. That's the Stoic path. And that's how anger, when held with wisdom, becomes not your downfall, but your catalyst. The final blow, why choosing calm is the ultimate act of power. We often think of power as something loud, a raised voice, a slammed door, a cutting remark that ends the argument. But what if real power, true power, is the opposite of that? What if power isn't in the strike, but in the stillness before it? What if power is in the refusal to be moved by provocation, in the deliberate act of remaining calm when every nerve in your body is calling for war? This is where Seneca's wisdom hits the deepest nerve. Because in a world that tells you to defend your ego at all costs, to never back down, to strike first and hardest, he proposes something radical. Calm is stronger than rage. Silence is louder than yelling. Restraint is more forceful than retaliation. And peace, hard-earned, deliberately chosen peace, is the ultimate act of control. Think about this. When someone tries to anger you and fails, who really holds the power? The one who lashes out, or the one who smiles, breathes, and lets it pass through like wind through leaves? Seneca knew the answer. He saw anger as a chain reaction and calm as the person who breaks that chain. Because when you choose calm, you don't just diffuse the situation, you deny your enemy control over your inner state. And isn't that what anger is really about? Control. Someone disrespects you and your pride screams, "They can't treat me like that." But Seneca would ask, what are you protecting? Your reputation, your pride, or your peace? Because one of those things is fleeting and the other is everything. You have to decide what matters more, winning the moment or winning yourself. Here's the truth that most people miss. Anger is easy. It's instinctual, it's primal. But calm is earned. It requires awareness, it demands strength. Not the kind that flexes, but the kind that stands still in the middle of the storm. Calm is the product of preparation, of knowing yourself so well that when the moment comes, when the insult hits, when the betrayal cuts deep, you already know your response. You don't panic, you don't pretend, you just hold. Seneca believed this kind of control wasn't reserved for sages or monks, it was available to everyone. But only if you practiced, only if you rehearsed calm before the chaos. Only if you saw every moment of frustration, every rude comment, every unexpected challenge as training, not as threats. That shift, seeing anger not as a battle, but as a gym for your character, changes everything. The most powerful people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who intimidate you with their temper. They're the ones who make you feel safe with their steadiness. They don't need to raise their voice. They are the voice of reason. And that's not weakness. That's dominance over the most unpredictable opponent of all, the self. So what's the final blow? It's not revenge. It's not the perfect comeback. It's not showing them you're right. The final blow is walking away with your dignity intact. It's choosing peace so decisively that no one can drag you out of it. It's realizing you don't need to win the fight because you already won the war within. Anger is a thief. It steals time. It steals presence. It clouds your vision. But calm gives you back everything you thought you had to defend with force. So ask yourself this right now: who has access to your mind? Who has the power to move you off your center? And what would it look like, what would it feel like if the answer was, no one but me? Because in the end, the one who chooses calm is the one who cannot be conquered. And that, Seneca knew, is the greatest kind of power there is.